Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about some spring overreactions coming from the SEC. Had some players that I felt like were going to be absolutely incredible this year. The quarterback play is going to be off the charts. But before I jump into this last segment, I just wanted to thank everyone that is watching. This is comfortably the most people that I've had watching live, so very, very cool. I really, really appreciate everyone tuning in. But let's get to a Hot Take Thursday. And this might be a hot take, this might not be. I feel like there's some talk around this, but who knows? I'll throw it out there and we'll decide later. But May is over, or May is here, excuse me. May is here, spring practices and spring games are over, and the important months are really just getting underway. Frankly, I think these are the months where you win championships. There is a lot of that talk of, grind and silence type time you have between spring practice and summer workouts, and frankly, it's true. These are where championship teams separate themselves from everyone else, and a lot of this stuff might sound kind of trivial. A lot of this stuff might sound not that big of a deal when you actually lace them up, but I promise you it does. You will see that whatever team ends up being in the playoff, making a crazy run, being, the team that ends up lifting the trophy, I promise you that you will see a number of pictures and a number of stories about them working out together or going on vacation together or whatever over the next little bit. But there's a couple of different things that kind of go into this, and I think one of the biggest things is you look at championship teams, especially over the last couple of years in Michigan and the two UGA teams that won the last 3 years. I think the one thing that really, really stood out to me, and I think stood out to a number of people when you were watching those teams, was it felt like everyone there was genuinely good friends, genuinely cared for one another, genuinely felt like these are, my other family. And it felt like that came a lot from that leadership that comes from the top down, where you hold your guys accountable and you kind of keep everyone in line, and that doesn't happen until you're really good friends. I'm sure a lot of you have this experience where someone new will say something to you that maybe it's telling you to do something or something like that. You're much less inclined to do it with someone that you don't respect or don't care for than if your friend asked you to do something and asked you to push yourself or asked you to give in that extra work. You're much more willing to do that for your friend than someone that you just met or someone that you don't trust. So this is where that happens. There's a lot of guys that come into a team, especially with the transfer portal now, during spring and really only have spring camp to be around the team, and spring camp is a very intense time, especially for kids coming in as freshmen, where you're adapting to a lot of this stuff. And it's not that they don't have time to, hang out with each other outside of football and everything, but a lot of it is go work out, go to class, recover, and then come back and do it again the next day. There's not necessarily this real gap in time to really kind of enjoy the simple things in life and go out to have a meal and take a little vacation and do the little things that add up in a lot of ways. So getting together with your position group and working out together, whether it's quarterbacks going out and getting more of a rapport with the receivers, especially in the transfer portal era, where you need to know what guys are going to do. You need to know, when this guy gets to the top of his corner route, he likes to break this way. When, he's running a curl, he takes this many steps and it's this type of rhythm. Those things can win or lose you football games, because especially on things like curls and things like comeback routes, where if that's not on time and on target, it could be picked and run, 60 yards the other direction. So all of these things really, really add up. And obviously you do that during spring practice. You do a ton of that, but everyone does that. There's not a team in the country that doesn't do spring practice and doesn't go through at least similar drills. We did see a weird video from Florida State spring practice where they had quarterbacks tackling, but that's an anomaly. I don't know what was going on there. But I think they go through this in spring practice, obviously. But the teams that really separate themselves are the ones that do it when no one's watching, right? When no one is out there yelling at them, when the coaches aren't allowed to be out there. Excuse me. When the coaches aren't allowed to be out there yelling at them, that's when you win football games, frankly, because there's a couple of different things that happen during that time. One, you just become closer with the guys that you're hanging around with. Going through trials and tribulations with people make you very close. And some of those workouts you can definitely categorize as trials and tribulations because, man, do they work their butt off. So a lot of this is just, getting in the room together, working out together, and putting yourself through that physical pain. It's a bonding experience. It's very interesting, but it definitely is. And then you get, a couple of inside jokes. You get a couple of laughs. You get to know these guys a little bit better. You get to maybe meet their families and do little things that, get lunch together, have game nights, enjoy a responsible night out. I want to put that in there for sure. But all of these things matter. And they, you won't see a lot of them. You won't necessarily see, Carson Beck and Dylan Bell getting lunch together in downtown Athens. You won't see Quinn Ewers and Isaiah Bond getting together for a night out. You won't necessarily see all this in real time, but it'll show up. I promise you that. Because when we look at football as a whole, the football that we all love and we all, watch every Saturday, it's war. There's really no other way to put it. These guys strap on helmets, they strap on shoulder pads, and they fly at each other for 4 hours. And it's kind of insane, to be totally honest with you. It's one of the things that we love about the sport, that all of the guys on that field are doing something that is a little wild. And the only real way for them to do that with the utmost confidence and do that with the utmost comfortability is to look to your left and right and know that those guys have your back and know that you have their back and know that, you are quote unquote brothers. You are people that have been through tough times together, but also have shared a lot of really good times and have developed a bond that doesn't go away after football. And that's the biggest thing in championship teams, where you'll see 5 years later where you'll see Georgia players, whether it's Jordan Davis and Stetson Bennett, getting together to, have lunch or whatever. It doesn't necessarily matter. It's just some of these teams, you can see the bond and it doesn't stop once football ends. And that's the biggest thing that can happen over these next couple of weeks, these next couple of months, where these guys can really get to know each other and really become friends. And I think one of the things that have said a million times, and I think really applies to quarterbacks, and is one of the reasons that quarterbacks are a little bit unfairly criticized at times, but we can get to that in a different segment. The most important thing in any sport, particularly team sports, in my personal opinion, is confidence in yourself and the people around you. You have to be able to fully trust these guys. You have to be able to feel incredibly confident in not only your abilities, but the ability of the guy behind you. The defensive tackle, if the defensive tackle hates the safety or the linebacker that's right behind him, he's not going to trust him to make that tackle. And it's going to cause him to force on some plays and make a mistake. That's then going to put a linebacker or a safety in a bad situation. So all of this has consequences. And if your defensive tackle is friends with your safety, and your safety is friends with your wide receiver, and your wide receiver is friends with your kicker, all of this just becomes so much easier. When a guy scores and you have a million people mobbing him, not just his position group or not just the quarterback that threw him the pass, it means more. It shows you what this team is really about, and it shows you that when May hit, when they were able to walk away from spring practice and were officially able to, take a deep breath and take some time off, they didn't. They got back together. They went out on the field in, nighttime and got passes up and got kicks up and went out to dinner afterwards and enjoyed each other's company and developed this bond that is just so important to being a successful football team. So people have said this before. It might not be as hot of a take as I've made it out to be, I'll be totally honest. People have said that these months are remarkably important before, but I just think some people, shrug it off, sort of. Some people say, yeah, it's important, but, not as important as the practices that go on. And maybe that's the case, but I'll be totally honest with you. I think there's an ability that you can unlock if you use these months correctly. Not only from a, playing standpoint with these players being on the same page and, having as much rapport with your quarterback and receivers as possible and all of that type of stuff on field. But holding guys accountable is infinitely easier when you're friends with them. Yelling at guys when it needs to happen is infinitely easier when you're friends with them because it's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of care, and it's not coming from a place of, this guy sucks. I need this guy off my team. That guy cares about you, and this is when that happens. This is when those bonds are formed, especially for those young guys or those transfer portal guys coming in. So I'm not saying that, if a team is, not together every second of the day, they're screwed. I promise that is not the case. But I can almost promise you that in January, when we see a team lift a trophy, there will be a quote that will come out from one of those players saying, it was the times in May. It was the times after spring practice. It was the countless hours we were out there without our coaches, or it was the lunch that we got every day because it became a tradition during this time of the year, and it made us closer, and it made us, essentially share a brain. You will hear stories about, this guy went out of his way to take me out to dinner and tell me that I'm going to be a fantastic player, but I'm going to hold you accountable, and that made it so much easier for me to develop as a young player. So there's a million different ways to kind of go about this and kind of make this argument, but I cannot overstate just how important these days are, these weeks are, these months are, because a championship team is going to be born in this couple of weeks. Now, a couple of them will, and then they'll figure it out on the field, but the teams that separate themselves, the teams that find their way into the playoff, and especially find their way onto the field in the national title, they will be the teams that you see, some going on vacation together, some getting lunch together, some doing the little things, being out in the field in pitch black with the lights coming down on them, throwing passes. All that stuff matters, and all that stuff gets to happen now without the coach yelling at you. So it's an opportunity that some people squander, but the teams that win the title absolutely do not. So it'll be a really interesting thing to watch over the next couple of weeks, but I love this time of year. I think it's a very interesting time of year where you don't get to see it in real time. You don't get to see it, plastered on every TV around the world, but if you're paying attention, you can find the team that or the teams that are kind of utilizing these months the way that they're supposed to be utilized. But we'll figure out who those teams are, right? We'll figure out in January and December who those teams are that have separated themselves over the next 2 months. But we'll get to that when we get there. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram for all of the content and updates. We have a million people doing incredible work around pretty much every sport you could possibly want. So definitely tune in to all of those shows if you want any of that. Thank you again for all of the people watching today. It honestly is very, very cool to see that number continue to rise, but very much appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.